it's a big deal who you choose to serve with and where you choose to serve. You know, if you were going to join a gang or a military organization or a cult or some other group, presuming that group is somewhat monolithic, and by that I mean they all have generally the same ideas, they have the same notions about politics or race or religion or whatever, the way you're supposed to properly cook a cheesecake, I don't know, whatever they find to be priorities. That when you choose that group to hang out with, the vegans or the vegetarians, the carnivores, the meat eaters, those who eat any meat but pork or ham, when you choose that group to hang out with, you kind of label yourself. You kind of identify yourself by those that you identify with. You know that though, right? You know that the group that you run with, the group that you hang out with, people will very quickly identify you as one of them. And if you're one of them, then people presume that you think just like them. That by hanging out with them and being just like them, that whatever they say, you must say as well. Whatever they believe, you must believe as well. Whatever they do, you're probably going to do as well. Now, there doesn't have to be any truth to that. Well, how do we know that? Well, one of the greatest religious figures of all time was a guy by the name of Jesus. Jesus grew up the son of a carpenter, but then he did the proper training to become and to be called rabbi, which is not a word that was flippantly thrown around. But the people that he hung out with were labeled by other religious leaders, which he would be considered in that day as a rabbi, a religious leader. But the people he hung out with were labeled as sinners and tax collectors. They accused him of being a drunkard. They accused him of being the guy who hung out with prostitutes. They didn't like the crowd that he ran with because he was a little bit different than the regular religious teachers. Most of the religious teachers kept their distance from people like that. Most of the religious teachers didn't want to have anything to do with that crowd. But this particular man had a certain level of influence among the religious elites, among the legal elites, among the political elites. In fact, I would venture to guess there probably weren't more than 100 or so Jewish citizens who stood face to face with Pontius Pilate for a conversation. Maybe those 100 that did were those who were prosecuted and sentenced to death, and maybe a lot of them had the chance to have a conversation face to face with Pontius Pilate. But as a representative of Caesar, he was on the hierarchy of the upper scale of the upper crust of all of society. He was considered royalty. He was the man. And here's this lowly carpenter's son, raised to adulthood, never married, no kids, no major social status. He's just creating a lot of mayhem in the culture at the time. Very few people know who he is for real, but they've seen him do some signs and wonders, and that made him fairly popular among some people. And here he is standing face to face with the man, with the supreme ruler of that era, that area at that time. And the man says to him, Pontius Pilate says to this nobody, "Don't you realize I have the authority to kill you or set you free?" Now, just think for a moment what your life would be like if you were called before the highest ruling government official in your community. The mayor, the governor, a senator, the president. If you were called to stand before them today and explain away or justify your actions, how would you do it? Better question, would you allow that moment in time to be an opportunity for you to influence circles that you normally don't have a chance to influence? See, it's one thing to say, I hang out with this group of people, and because I hang out with this group of people, I have influence in their circle. Or to say that because I hang out with this group of people and I have influence in their circle, by proxy, I have influence in other circles as well. So if you were to say, because I'm a celebrity and I hang out in the Hollywood circles, that I can also speak on politics or et cetera, et cetera. And there is some merit to that in so much as those who have been successful generally are held in a higher esteem than those who are struggling through life. Michael Jordan probably, and I could be mistaken, probably is not an expert in fabrics, probably is not an expert in the engineering of clothing, probably isn't an expert in the design of clothing, but when he was booked as the representative, the spokesman for Hanes boxer briefs, he suddenly became an expert on underwear. What made him an expert on underwear? Nothing other than his success, his stardom in basketball. His success in one circle made him an influence in another circle. Is that true for you? Are you enough of a success in one circle of friends, one circle of influence, that in another circle of influence you have recognition and prestige? You have influence to simply speak in that circle and be recognized because you're part of this circle? You'll notice my GC today. I'm serving at the Gateway Conference as a volunteer. I don't have a booth. I'm not speaking. I'm just answering questions and pointing people in the right direction and escorting them so they don't get lost if they need to get to the right place. But we have on our platform men of great influence from all over the country. Sometimes, last year, we had men from literally all over the world whose experience in leadership, specifically in the church, has been tremendous. And generally it has to do with that Michael Jordan type influence, in that they have led in their church, in their congregation, in their denomination, in their part of the country. They have led the circle of influence to great levels. So allowing them to speak into a different circle is a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing of influence. I volunteer in those circles so that I can hear, so that I can learn. No, I'm not a pastor. And no, I don't run a church of any size. But I am a leader. And there are conversations in the world of leadership that should be taking place in the church. Some that have been overlooked, some that have been ignored, some that have been applied. But those conversations should be taking place as much in the church as they are in the halls of Congress, as much as they should be in the schools of our universities and our colleges all across the country, around the globe. And those conversations of leadership, of unity, of bringing people back together, those conversations are supremely important at every level. The circles that I serve in, the circles that I volunteer in, the circles that I have influence in, all of those circles are overlapping. They're not concentric, but they're overlapping. And in some of the leadership circles, the whole religious idea, they prefer that that completely be left out. I can understand that, given their context. But it doesn't mean that the leadership principles have to change. In some of those areas, the religious ideologies reign supreme over any other ideologies. The right theology, understanding who God is and what he means to you, is absolutely critical. And the leadership portions of it, unfortunately, sometimes just get left out. If you have a supreme theological mind, then you're the influencer in that circle. Whether you have understanding of leadership principles or application of them or not seems to be irrelevant. Overlapping those circles brings a lot of strength to both. And that's one of the things that I love about the Gateway Conference. The Gateway Conference is about bringing together some of the greatest and brightest theological minds with some of the greatest leadership minds, the administrative type of leadership that allows an organization to function at a high level with great efficiency. Those are important aspects of good team leadership and good individual leadership. And if we're going to influence society, if we're going to influence government, if we're going to influence individuals, those things all have to start to click together. Dr. Tony Evans spoke last night about probably one of the most popular phrases among Christians, that if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, then I will hear them and I will heal their land. He said the biggest challenge that most Christians struggle with is understanding why the land in 2 Chronicles was under such turmoil. And when you get that, it kind of changes your whole perspective on just the phrase itself. What caused them to need to humble themselves before God? What caused their land to be in such turmoil? Go back to 2 Chronicles and read that. It's pretty fascinating. And it's a great illustration and overlay for what's going on in America today. It's a failure of church leadership in a lot of aspects. The question is, what do we do differently? Well, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not sure that any one person does. But when you have a chance to volunteer, to find yourself in circles of influence that normally you don't have influence, to find yourself influenced by a circle of people that you normally don't have access to, volunteering is a very good way to earn your opportunity, to be influenced by minds that you normally wouldn't, and to influence minds that you normally don't have access to. The reason my video is early today is because I have to be there early, and I have to fight traffic to get there. So I'm spending time with you now because being a part of your life and your circle of influence is equally as important to me as being influenced by the people that I'm going to spend my day with. I believe we're just over 4,000 pastors from all over the country and around the world who have come to sit under the leadership of Gateway and its influencers to be influenced to greater leadership, greater ideas in the body of Christ, greater ideas on theology and the church and worship. And that's what Gateway does well. Gateway is not just a church, but it is a leadership organization that helps other churches. Gateway Network is a powerful, powerful tool, and I encourage you to check it out. But that's where I'm going to spend my day, being influenced by a circle of people that I don't always have access to, and influencing as many as I can in return. Will you take some time today and ask yourself the question, where could I volunteer to expand my circle of influence as a leader? Where could I volunteer to have access to leaders that I don't normally have access to? And what could I do to change the face of the community around me? What if I was called into the office of the most important political figure in my area? How would you react then? I'm J Loren Norris, and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.